In part 1, I demonstrated how the compilers of the Assyrian and Babylonian kings lists were probably none the wiser concerning the Assyrian and Babylonian rulers than we are today, though there is strong evidence to show that they were deliberately trying to mislead us. Archaeologists have simply accepted these king lists without proper scrutiny. Their refusal to accept that kings of the ancient world had more than the one name has also clouded their thinking. In part 1, I have provided you with evidence which shows how the Assyrian chronology can be reduced by around 500 years by demonstrating that Ninurta-Apel-Kor was another name for Ashur-uballit I, Tiglath-Pileser I was also known as Tukulti-Ninurta, and that Ashurnasirpal II and Adad-nirari III were one and the same person. If I had the time, I could show how the Assyrian chronology can be reduced by a further 500 years, totalling an overall reduction of around 1,000 years, which is no insignificant amount. Consider what happened 1,000 years ago today, and you will understand what I mean. The Battle of Hastings, which occurred in 1066 for example, occurred around 960 years ago. We shall now continue by looking at the biblical chronology. That there are errors in the Bible is an indisputable fact, and one which cannot be ignored. I would not be giving a balanced view if I did not discuss some of those errors here, as we need to face the truth. I would stress from the outset that the Bible is still the oldest and most authentic record of ancient history that we have, and despite these errors which I am about to reveal, still provides the most reliable framework for the reconstruction of history. It is important to remember that when Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, his captain of the guard Nebuzaradan burnt the city to the ground. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire. Consequently, when the Jews returned from Babylon and Persia during the times of Ezra and Nehemiah, they had to sift through the ashes in order to retrieve what information they could. To complicate things further, we see that they have retrieved the information from a number of different records, none of which have survived. There are constant references in the Bible to the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah and to the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. There are also references to the book of the Wars of the Lord, the book of the Acts of Solomon, the book of Nathan the prophet, and to the books of Shemaiah the prophet and of Iddo the seer concerning genealogies. What has been preserved in our current versions of the Bible has therefore been extracted from a number of different sources, all of which would have been very badly damaged. We must bear this in mind when we consider what information has actually been restored. I shall start with one of the most obvious errors. In 2 Kings chapter 15 verse 30, we read that Hoshea son of Elah began to reign in the 20th year of Jotham king of Judah. This is despite the fact that Jotham only reigned for 16 years. In another passage, instead of his reign starting in the 20th year of Jotham as stated above, we are told that Hoshea started to reign in the 12th year of Jotham's son Ahaz, having slain his predecessor Pekah. Ahaz is said to have started his rule in the 17th year of Pekach. This then means that Pekach, who is said to have ruled for 20 years, must have died in the 3rd year of Ahaz. But Hoshea, who is said to have slain Pekach and ruled in his stead, if he did not begin his rule until the 12th year of Ahaz, did not start ruling until 9 years later. To make matters worse, the Assyrian records show that Pekach could only have ruled for about 6 years, 12 years at the very most. Amaziah, king of Judah, was 25 years old when he began to reign, and is said to have ruled for 29 years. Jeroboam II, king of Israel, started reigning in Amaziah's 15th year and ruled for 41 years. This means that Jeroboam's reign ended in the 27th year of Amaziah's son, Azariah. But Jeroboam's son and successor, Zechariah, did not start reigning until the 38th year of Azariah, which leaves 11 years unaccounted for. Azariah is said to have been 16 years old when he began to reign and ruled for 52 years. His father Amaziah was 25 when he began to reign, which means that he was 54 when he died. If Azariah began ruling immediately after his father, then Azariah must have been born when Amaziah was 38 years old. Whilst not impossible, it nonetheless seems unlikely. If, however, Azariah was co-ruling with his father, then the 11-year gap would close and Azariah would have been born when his father was about 27, which seems a more likely age. In 2 Kings chapter 15 verse 5, Jotham is recorded as co-ruling with his father Azariah. The scribes, not realizing this, have placed Jotham's reign immediately after his father's. On this score, it is interesting to note that Tiglath-Pileser III mentions Azariah and he mentions Ahaz, who was encountered less than 14 years later. But there is no mention of Jotham, nor is there room for his 16-year independent reign as required by the biblical chronology. The scribes have clearly not allowed for the co-regency which must have existed. Furthermore, Azariah was 16 years old when he began to reign and ruled for 52 years. This means that he was 68 when he died. Jotham was 25 when he started to reign. If he started his reign immediately after his father, then his father will have been 43 years old when Jotham was born, which again, whilst not impossible, seems extremely unlikely. The Bible tells us that Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, started his reign in the 14th year of Hezekiah. We know from the Assyrian records that Esarhaddon ruled for 12 years. Depending on whether or not Esarhaddon's son Ashurbanipal was co-ruling with his father for the final year, as argued by J.E. Reid, or whether he began his reign immediately after his father, as suggested by J.A. Brinkman, Ashurbanipal's first year of reign coincided either with the 25th or 26th year of Hezekiah. As to be expected, Hezekiah's son Manasseh was king of Judah during the time of Ashurbanipal. What is not expected is that Manasseh was also king of Judah during the time of Ashurbanipal's father Esarhaddon. This means that when Hezekiah was sick unto death, his son was invested on the throne of Judah. This means that the first 15 years or more of Manasseh's reign coincided with the last 15 of Hezekiah's reign. The Jewish scribes were clearly unaware of this co-regency. Note that Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah, is said to have been 20 years old when he began to reign, and is understood to have ruled for 16 years. Hezekiah is said to have been 25 years old when he began to reign, and is understood to have ruled for 29 years. If you do the maths, this means that Ahaz will have been 11 years old when Hezekiah was born, which I would suggest is very unlikely. In Hebrew, numbers are represented by Hebrew letters. The Hebrew letter Kaf, for example, equals 20, whilst the Hebrew letter Yod equals 10. If the Hebrew letter Yod has somehow been misread as a Kaf, and remember that we do not know how badly damaged the original texts were, then Hezekiah might have more correctly been 15 when he began to reign rather than 25, which would then mean that his father Ahaz would have been 21 years old when he was born. In my opinion, this seems a much more likely explanation, though I would stress that this is pure speculation on my part. Note that Hezekiah's son Manasseh is said to have been 12 years old when he began to reign. If Manasseh started to reign in the 14th year of Hezekiah's reign, assuming that this is when, according to the Bible, Hezekiah became sick unto death, then Hezekiah would have been 17 years old when Manasseh was born. Again, this seems to me to be a much more plausible explanation than that which is preserved in our current copies of the Bible. Whichever way you look at it, the evidence quite clearly shows that the figures do not add up, and the amendments I am proposing here go some way towards reconciling these differences. The book of Jeremiah informs us that Shallum son of Josiah ruled in his father's stead. As no king of this name is mentioned either in the book of Kings or in the book of Chronicles, it follows from what Jeremiah tells us that Shallum was an alternative name for Jehoahaz. Not realizing this, the scribes have made Jehoahaz, who they have called Johanan, the firstborn son of Josiah, and Shallum the fourth. To confuse matters even further, in 2 Kings 23 verse 31, we are informed that Jehoahaz, the eldest son of Josiah, was 23 when he started to reign and ruled for 3 months. A few months later, Jehoiakim, the second eldest son of Josiah, reigned immediately after him and was 25 when he began to reign. This makes Jehoiakim, the second eldest son, 2 years older than Jehoahaz. Zedekiah is called son of Josiah by the prophet Jeremiah. He is called the brother of Jehoiakim's father in 2 Kings 24 verse 17, making him the brother of Jehoiakim and son of Josiah, which agrees with the above statement by the prophet Jeremiah. The book of Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 36 verse 10, however, makes Zedekiah the brother of Jehoiakim, which makes him the son of Jehoiakim. To cover themselves, the scribes who compiled the genealogical tables in 1 Chronicles 3 verses 15 and 16 have made Zedekiah both son of Josiah and of Jehoiakim. This is the same King Zedekiah, but who has been entered in the genealogical tables in 2 separate places with 2 different fathers. We know that Ashurbanipal reigned for 40 years. His reign therefore lasted until the 51st or 52nd year of Manasseh's 55-year reign. From then till the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, there is a maximum of 20 years in which to fit the final 3 to 4 years of Manasseh's reign, 2 years of Amon's reign, 31 years of Josiah's reign, and 4 years of Jehoiakim's reign. You do not need to be a mathematician to see that the biblical chronology is still far too long. The evidence suggests that Amon's 2-year reign occurred whilst his father was still king. Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and reigned for 2 years before being killed by his servants. Manasseh was 67 years old when he died, which means that Amon, if he ruled immediately after his father's death, must have been born when Manasseh was 45 years old. Whilst not impossible, it nonetheless once again seems unlikely. An intriguing statement is made by the prophet Ezekiel in the opening words of his book. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. This 30th year of some unnamed king's reign is an enigma. The 5th year of Jehoiakim's captivity should have been the 5th year of Siddekiah. A year later, in chapter 8, it changes to year 6, and although he still does not provide the name of the king, it is clear that it is year 6 of Siddekiah's reign. This is made clear in chapter 24 verse 1, where it discusses the destruction of Jerusalem in year 9, which can only refer to year 9 of Siddekiah. The only king known to have ruled for 30 or 31 years prior to Siddekiah is Josiah, but he was supposedly killed by Pharaoh Necho around 16 years earlier. The Book of Kings would have us believe that Josiah died on the battlefield and was carried in a chariot, dead from Megiddo. The Book of Chronicles, however, gives a slightly different story. According to that version, although he was sorely wounded, he was carried in a second chariot to Jerusalem, where he died. If the 30 years mentioned in the book of Ezekiel relates to Josiah, then there is the possibility that he actually died 16 to 17 years later. This sort of reduction is actually required by the Assyrian chronology, and shows that there are serious problems with the narrative that has been preserved in our current copies of the Bible. If Josiah did die in the 6th year of Siddekiah, then the chronology becomes difficult to reconcile. Josiah is said to have been 8 years old when he began to reign. This means that if he arranged for the repairs to be made to the temple in the 18th year of his reign, this event will have taken place in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which is after Josiah's encounter with Pharaoh Necho. If Jehoahaz was 23 when he began to reign, then he will have been born 1 year before Josiah was born. Similarly, if Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, then he will have been born 3 years before Josiah was born. And if Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, he will have been born when Josiah was 15. So if the book of Ezekiel is not referring to the 30th year of Josiah, then what is it referring to? I can only surmise that Josiah was not 8 years old when he began to reign, as the Bible records, but was more likely to have been 28 years old, hence 59 when he died. This is the only way I can reconcile the information, and should give you some idea of the problems we are faced with. The New Testament writer Matthew would have us believe that from the time of Abraham to King David there were 14 generations, and from David to Jeconiah were another 14 generations, and from then to the time of Christ another 14 generations. We cannot comment on the latter calculation, as we simply do not have any genealogical charts with which to compare. The suggestion, however, that there were 14 generations from Abraham to David is simply false. We are talking of a period of around 1,000 years, which, if there were only 14 generations, works out at approximately 70 years to a generation. Admittedly, Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Isaac was 60 when he had Jacob. But to argue that those who came after all had sons at the age of 70 is just not tenable. In Genesis 50 verses 22 and 26, for example, we are told that Joseph was 110 years old when he died, and saw the children of his son to the 3rd generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought up upon Joseph's knees, we are told. I can see where Matthew has obtained his information from. He has blindly followed the passage in 1 Chronicles 2 verses 5 to 15, a genealogy which is repeated in Ruth chapter 4 verses 18 to 22, not realizing that this is an abridged genealogy. I say abridged because in Numbers 1 verse 7 we are told that Nachshon son of Amminadab was one of the people who came out of Egypt, hence will have died in the wilderness. This then means that his son Shalma, who is called Shalmon in the book of Ruth, these names being transliterated into English as Salma and Salmon respectively, was born in the wilderness. Both the genealogy given in the book of Chronicles as well as in the book of Ruth then both jump from this Shalma or Shalman to Boaz, who lived around 400 years later. There were therefore considerably more than 14 generations between Abraham and David. There is nothing wrong with the lineage. The lineage is fine. It's just that Matthew was unaware that he was dealing with an abridged genealogy. In biblical Hebrew, the word ben, which is usually translated as son, can mean son, grandson, great-grandson or descendant. The same is true also for the Assyrian, Egyptian and other ancient languages. In Genesis 46 verse 21, we read that Gera and Bela were 2 of the 10 sons of Benjamin. Yet in 1 Chronicles 8 verses 1 to 5, we are told that Benjamin only had 5 sons, and that Gera was the son of Bela, son of Benjamin. Note how this entry in the book of Chronicles pretty much rewrites the entire entry in the book of Genesis. Note also how Ard, son of Benjamin, is likewise called son of Bela, son of Benjamin, but his name has undergone a metathesis and is now Adar instead of Ard. I also cannot understand why Gera is mentioned twice in the entry in the book of Chronicles. This surely is an error. In the book of Judges, Ehud is called son of Gera. Here the word son is used in the sense of descendant. This is in the same way that Jews are today called Bnei Yehudah, that is, sons of Judah. This despite the fact that Judah lived many centuries earlier. This is no different to the way the Scottish, for example, use the word Mac to mean son or descendant, as in MacDonald, Mac Campbell, and so on. The Greek writer Strabo informs us that there were, in his day, this being the 1st century BCE, a people called Gerai who were merchants dealing in the transportation of goods such as salt, spices and aromatics. Concerning these Gerai, Strabo writes, "By the trade in these aromatics, both the Sabaeans and the Gerai have become the richest of all the tribes, and possess a great quantity of wrought articles in gold and silver, as couches, tripods, basins, drinking vessels, to which we must add the costly magnificence of their houses. For the doors, walls and roofs are variegated with inlaid ivory, gold, silver and precious stones." We are told that these Gerai built the Phoenician city of Gera on the Persian Gulf, a city built by Chaldean exiles from Babylon, Strabo tells us. Bear in mind that this is where the Jews were taken by Nebuchadnezzar. These Gerai were therefore descendants of Gera, son of Benjamin. The point I am trying to make is that many of the names of these progenitors became family names. This also needs to be borne in mind when studying the Bible, as well as other historical records. Even setting these arguments aside, take a good look at the list of kings of Judah that Matthew has provided. First of all, let me explain that Jeconiah is the person called Jehoiakim in the books of Kings and Chronicles. Jeconiah is but a variant spelling of his name. In Jeremiah chapters 22 verse 24 and 37 verse 1, he is called Coniah. We know that Jeconiah son of Jehoiakim is intended by Matthew because his next entry is Shealtiel, who, according to 1 Chronicles 3 verse 17, was the son of Jeconiah. Having established this, take a good look at his list of kings. Matthew has omitted Jehoash and Amaziah, jumping straight from Jehoram to his great-grandson Azariah. He has also omitted Jehoiakim in between Josiah and Jeconiah. This means that Matthew's 14 generations between David and Jeconiah turn out to be 17 generations. Not many people seem to realise that the Hebrew square script which is in use today dates no earlier than the Persian period. In the time of Hezekiah, the Paleo-Hebrew script was in common usage. This is amply demonstrated by the Siloam inscription found in Hezekiah's tunnel in the city of David, as well as a number of archaeological finds at places such as Samaria in northern Israel. 2 bullae have been found in the city of David by the Israeli archaeologist Elat Mazar, dating to the time of the prophet Jeremiah, one bearing the name Gedaliah, the other Yehukel. Again, these were written with Paleo-Hebrew characters. During the time of King David, they were apparently using an even older alphabet known as Proto-Canaanite. During her excavations in Jerusalem, Elat Mazar discovered an inscription on a fragment of a storage jar, which is being dated to around the time of King David, written in this Proto-Canaanite script. To date, there have been at least 7 different readings of the small fragment of text which you can see around the rim of the jar, each of them proposed by eminent epigraphers. The important thing to bear in mind is that the Bible will originally have been written in one or the other of these earlier scripts. Certainly the later of these records, especially from the time of Hezekiah onwards, will have been written in Paleo-Hebrew. When the Hebrew Bible was transcribed from Paleo-Hebrew to the more modern Hebrew square script, a few errors crept in. The letters Resh and Dalet in modern Hebrew are sometimes hard to tell apart, especially when you are dealing with texts which have faded over time. As you can see from this chart, the Resh and Dalet in the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet are even harder to distinguish. Consequently, Chemdan, son of Duke Dishon in the book of Genesis, is called Chamran in the book of Chronicles, though in the Authorized Version the name is written Amram. Riphat, son of Gomer in the book of Genesis, is called Diphat in the book of Chronicles, but in the Authorized Version this has been corrected to Riphat. Dodanim, son of Yavan in the book of Genesis, likewise becomes Rodanim in the book of Chronicles, though once again, in the Authorized Version, this has been corrected to Dodanim. In the Book of Kings we read, "At that time Rezin king of Syria recovered Elat to Syria, and drave the Jews from Elat. And the Syrians came to Elat and dwelt there unto this day." The word Aramim, which is translated as Syrians, has a margin note in the Hebrew to say that it should actually read Edomim, that is, Edomites. It should be noted that the Septuagint translates the word as Idumeans, that is, Edomites. As the city was known thereafter as Elon or Elana, it was most likely named after the Edomite duke who was known as Elon the Hittite. We are told in Genesis 36 verse 2 that Esau took to wife Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Basmat, the daughter of Ishmael, and sister of Ishmael's son Nebaioth. In Genesis 26 verse 34, however, Basmat is called daughter of Elon the Hittite, and an otherwise unattested Yehudit, daughter of Beeri the Hittite, appears. Beeri the Hittite is also otherwise unattested. It seems very unlikely that Esau had 2 wives with the name Basmat, and it would be strange if both Yehudit and this other Basmat were omitted in Genesis chapter 36 and in 1 Chronicles chapter 1, where Esau's sons are named. Despite this statement in all our extant copies of the Bible that Esau, when he was 40 years of age, married Judith and Basmat, a statement which incidentally also appears in the Septuagint, the Jewish priest historian Josephus clearly seems to have been working from a different copy of the Bible, because he states that when Esau was 40 years old, he married Adah and Aholibamah. Now when Esau, one of the sons of Isaac, whom the father principally loved, was now come to the age of 40 years, he married Ada the daughter of Helon, and Aholibamah the daughter of Esabeon, which Helon and Esabeon were great lords among the Canaanites. This seems to me to be far more likely than that which is preserved in our current copies of the Bible. On a final note, it should be mentioned that both the Septuagint and Josephus called Hadad the Edomite, who was an adversary to King Solomon, Adair or Adaros. This suggests that both the compilers of the Septuagint as well as Josephus were likewise working from scriptures written in the Paleo-Hebrew script. There are also a number of places in the Bible where someone at a relatively late date has amended the original text. For example, the city of Dan is mentioned in Genesis 14 verse 14 long before Dan was born and long before he gave his name to the city. The country of the Amalekites is mentioned in Genesis 14 verse 7 before Amalek son of Eliphaz son of Esau was born. In the book of Judges, chapter 1 verse 26, we are told that the Hittites were forced out of Luz, and they built a further city by the name of Luz elsewhere. The old city of Luz was then renamed Bethel. The book of Joshua, which is supposed to be earlier than the book of Judges, calls the original city of Luz Bethel, and talks of Joseph's border being from Bethel to Luz and passeth along unto the borders of Archi to Ataroth. This new city of Luz did not exist at that time, which means that someone at some later date has updated the book of Joshua. The mention of the city of Ramses in the books of Genesis, Exodus and Numbers is yet another anachronism. The city will most likely have been known to Moses as Khat Nabu. The identification of P. Ramses as the biblical store city of Ramses makes sense geographically, but the idea that Ramses II was the pharaoh of the Exodus is totally unsound. Not only can it be shown that Israel was at that time already well established in the land of Israel, but in Genesis 47 verse 11 we are told that Joseph and his family settled in the land of Ramses, which is a few hundred years before the Exodus, long before the king of the Exodus was born. Having emphasized the problems which exist in the Bible, it is also important for us to understand just how indispensable the Bible is as a historical tool. We have already effectively demonstrated this by showing how the Assyrian and Babylonian chronicles are contrived. By cross-referring the Assyrian chronology with that provided in the Bible, we have been able to make corrections to the Assyrian chronology, and at the same time we have been able to better understand the biblical chronology. This is how it should be, as this is the correct scientific approach. We need to weigh all the evidence and not completely reject the one chronology in favour of the other. To demonstrate how effective the Bible can be, we shall look at the Chaldean kingdom with Nebuchadnezzar as his head. The prophet Jeremiah tells us, "And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolations." When Cyrus, king of Persia, conquered Babylon, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. We are led to believe that from the first year of Nebuchadnezzar till the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, was 70 years. Yet the chronicles and king lists only record 67 years. The Babylonian chronicles, as well as all the Greek writers, are unanimous in accrediting Nebuchadnezzar with a reign of 43 years. The Bible records, "And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, that Evil-Merodach king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, did lift up the head of Jehoiachin king of Judah out of prison." Jehoiachin was taken prisoner in the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. His first year of captivity therefore coincided with the 8th to 9th year of Nebuchadnezzar's. The 37th year of Jehoiachin will therefore have been the 45th to 46th year of Nebuchadnezzar, meaning that Nebuchadnezzar ruled for 45 years, not 43. It can be shown that this 2-year difference between the length of reign given in the Bible and that recorded by the Babylonians is down to the fact that Nebuchadnezzar only became king of Babylon from the 3rd year of his reign. The Babylonian chronicles, which would have us believe that Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylon immediately on the death of his father, are wrong.
The 4th chapter of the book of Daniel informs us that Nebuchadnezzar went insane for 7 years, at the end of which the kingdom was restored to him. "And 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. And whereas it was commanded to leave a stump of the roots of the tree, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee." Josephus also confirms that his kingdom was restored to him. A little after this, the king saw in his sleep again another vision, how he should fall from his dominion and feed among the wild beasts, and that when he had lived in this manner in the desert for 7 years, he should recover his dominion again. Who then was in control of the kingdom in his 7-year absence? The answer is obvious when one thinks about it. Amel-Marduk 2 years, Neriglissar for 4 years, and Labush-Marduk for 9 months, totalling near enough 7 years. Bear in mind that there were probably delays between the death of the one king and the accession of his successor.
When the throne was restored to Nebuchadnezzar, he styled himself Nabonidus. By this time, Nebuchadnezzar will have been quite old. Assuming that he was in his teens when he first became king, he must, by the time his throne was restored to him, have been in his late 60s or in his 70s. Notice that the portrait of Nabonidus shown here confirms that we are talking of an old man. That Nebuchadnezzar was co-ruling with his son Belshazzar is confirmed by the book of Baruch. And pray for the life of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and for the life of Balthasar, his son, that their days may be upon earth as the days of heaven, and that the Lord may give us strength and enlighten our eyes, that we may live under the shadow of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and under the shadow of Balthasar, his son, and may serve them many days, and may find favour in their sight. Quoting the words of a reinstated king now known as Nabonidus, Nabonidus, the king of Babylon, the preserver of Esagila and Ezida, the performer of pious deeds, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, the perfect prince am I. Esagila and Ezida were Nebuchadnezzar's pride and joy. As for Nebuchadnezzar, there has been much scholarly debate as to his status and background. Nebuchadnezzar had noble connection, political importance and religious piety, Doherty informs us. The name Nebuchadnezzar was variously written Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadrezzar or Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadrezzarus, Nebuchadnezzar and so on. Scholars can just about cope with these variant spellings of the name Nebuchadnezzar, but they struggle when they see the name Nebuchadnezzar written in another form. In short, Nebuchadnezzar is a variant spelling of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar being the name of Nebuchadnezzar's father. The aged king claimed, "Nabonidus, the king of Babylon, the faithful Lord who heeds the decrees of the gods, the humble one, the submissive one, the reverer of the great gods, the wise prince, the one who is mindful of whatever exists, the exalted princely priest, the renewer of all cities, the prudent prince, the one who causes temples to be finished. Renewer of all cities? Nabonidus spent most of his years in semi-retirement in Tamar in Arabia, leaving the kingdom in the hands of his son Belshazzar. As Nabonidus, he could not possibly have been a renewer of cities. Nebuchadnezzar, on the other hand, not only completely rebuilt Babylon, but was also responsible for building other cities and fortresses throughout the land. Note the use of the words the humble one and submissive one in the above passage. Submissive to whom, if not the God of Israel? It should be noted that the Assyrian words translated as great gods is Ilani Mes Labuti Mes. In my opinion, Ilani is equivalent to the Hebrew Elohim, a word meaning God rather than gods, and Rabuti is equivalent to the Hebrew word Rabbah, meaning great. The prophet Daniel records, "And at the end of the days I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honoured him that liveth for ever." The Bible therefore offers a plausible explanation to the words employed by Nabonidus in the above inscription, words whose meaning could easily be overlooked. Just to confuse matters, Nebuchadnezzar's son Belshazzar was also known as Nabonidus. Josephus called him Balthasar, who by the Babylonians was called Nabonidus. Herodotus called him Labanitis, son of Labanitis. Now, the interchange of the letters N and L in ancient languages is well attested. For example, Nemare Amenemhat III of the Egyptian 12th dynasty was variously known as Lamaris, Labaris, Lacharis and Amaris by the Greeks, with Diodorus calling him Moris. Each of these names are variant spellings of Nemare. Those familiar with the works of Josephus will know that he called Reuben, the firstborn son of Jacob, Rubelos. Belshazzar was therefore the younger Nabonidus, here called Labanitis by Herodotus, whilst Nebuchadnezzar was the elder Nabonidus. Having made these discoveries, I can confirm that the following inscription ascribed to Nabonidus actually belongs to Belshazzar. As for Nebuchadrezzar and Neriglissar, the kings who preceded me, I am their mighty delegate. Their troops have been entrusted into my hand. The mention of Nebuchadrezzar, this being another variant spelling of Nebuchadnezzar, is perfectly understandable. If the inscription belonged to the elder Nabonidus, who we are here identifying as Nebuchadnezzar, then these words would not make sense. The key to this inscription is in the words, "Their troops have been entrusted into my hand." The big question is, who has entrusted the troops into his hand if not his father Nabonidus the elder? Nebuchadnezzar entrusted the running of the kingdom to his son Belshazzar, alias Nabonidus the younger. The above statement is therefore in perfect accord with the facts as being presented here. By applying the biblical chronology, we are able to correct the errors scholars have made. The Babylonian chronicles all inform us that Nabonidus was taken by Cyrus, king of Persia, in the 17th year of his reign. Doherty records, "The last completely dated tablet of the reign of Nabonidus belongs to the 10th day of the 8th month of his 17th year. An incompletely dated tablet belongs to the 9th month of the same year. The earliest tablet dated in the reign of Cyrus belongs to the 7th month of his accession year, the day of the month being illegible. The next Cyrus tablet belongs to the 24th day of the 8th month of his accession year. According to the Bible, this should have actually been the 18th year of the elder Nabonidus, better known to us as Nebuchadnezzar. It seems, however, that these tablets are referring to the 17th year of the younger Nabonidus, also known as Belshazzar. This is how the chronology of the period looks when we make the above corrections. There were actually 70 years from the time of Nebuchadnezzar's first year to his final year, when he was deposed by Cyrus, king of Persia. This now accords with the statement by the prophet Jeremiah that the lands would be ruled over by Nebuchadnezzar for 70 years. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolations. There were also 70 years from the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar till the 2nd year of Darius I, king of Persia. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah the son of Berechiah the son of Iddo the prophet. Then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long will you not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which you have had indignation these past 70 years? Cyrus ruled Babylon for around 9 years. He initially placed his general Ugbaru in charge of affairs, but he, that is Ugbaru, died within a few months of taking charge. In the Bible, Ugbaru is called Darius the Mede. This is the person the Greeks called Harpagus. Note the metathesis. Metatheses were far more common in ancient languages than most people seem to realise. The Greek historian Strabo informs us that Harpagus, that is Ugbaru, was Cyrus's general. The Greek writer Herodotus tells us that Cyrus was brought up in the care of Harpagus, who spared the child's life when instructed by Astyages, king of the Medes, to kill him. Who better then to put in charge of the affairs of Babylon? The temple was destroyed in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar. From then until the first year of Cyrus, which marked the end of Chaldean rule, was 51 years. Although Cyrus was king for around 29 years, he was king of Babylon only for the last 9 years of his reign. He was succeeded by Cambyses, who appears in Ezra chapter 4 verse 6 as Ahasuerus, a name which is transliterated in the Authorized Version as Ahasuerus. Note that Ahasuerus is the Hebrew transliteration of the name which in Greek is written Xerxes. In other words, Xerxes was an alternative name for Cambyses. He is understood to have ruled for 7 years and 5 months. After him comes a king variously known as Bardiya, Gormata, Sphenidatis and Pseudo-Smerdis, to name but a few of his aliases. In the Bible he is called Artaxerxes, a name which is transliterated via the Greek as Artaxerxes, not to be confused with the Artaxerxes who lived around half a century later and was a contemporary of Ezra and Nehemiah. Bardiya is understood to have ruled for around 7 months. He was followed by Darius Hystaspes, better known to us as Darius I or Darius the Great, who ruled for 36 years. It was in the 2nd year of his reign that the foundation of the temple was laid in Jerusalem. This was 19 years after Cyrus took Babylon, and exactly 70 years from the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, when the temple was destroyed. People like things to be black and white, and so generally fall into one of two camps. The one camp says that the Bible is the inspired word of God, therefore it cannot contain any errors. The other camp says that the Bible contains errors, hence it cannot be the inspired word of God. The truth is that the Bible is an authentic and reliable record, but it has undergone 2 conflagrations, which has resulted in the original text being only partially preserved. Nebuchadnezzar's captain, Nebuzaradan, burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem. Even every great man's house burnt he with fire. There is also evidence that the scribes have in places added their own thoughts, and there are instances where they have updated the place names with their more modern equivalents. As for the genealogy provided for Jesus in the book of Matthew, we have shown that for the period between Abraham and David, he has simply followed what is recorded in the books of Chronicles and Ruth, without understanding that he was dealing with an abridged genealogy. I am nonetheless surprised that Matthew has omitted 3 kings of Judah, as I would have thought that these would have been mentioned in all of the scrolls in the temple and in the synagogues. They also appear in the Septuagint, so it makes me wonder how he could have made such an error. Nevertheless, an error it is, and shows how Matthew is human and is prone to making mistakes just like the rest of us. The Jews who returned from Babylon and Persia during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah will have had to sift through the ashes in order to restore what they could of the original texts. This will have meant extracting the information from a number of different sources, and there is evidence that they have, in a number of places, combined information from more than the one source, even when they are not directly related. In Exodus 17, for example, we are told that Moses smote the rock at Horeb, and in verse 7 of that chapter we are told that he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel. It should be noted that Massah and Meribah were 2 different places, which were over 200 miles apart. In fact, Meribah was near to the city of Kadesh of Barnea, and the Bible quite clearly states in Deuteronomy 1 verse 2 that there are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh of Barnea. The scribes have therefore combined 2 place names which don't belong together. Likewise, in Deuteronomy 1 verse 1, we read, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea," here simply called Suf in the Hebrew, "between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Chatzeroth and Di-Zahab." The places mentioned to the left of the red line were around 100 miles away from the places mentioned to the right of that line. Once again, the scribes have combined 2 separate passages which don't belong together. I shan't go into all of that here in this video, however, because it would require adding another hour or more of content. This will all be explained in a separate video in which we shall do an in-depth study of the route of the Exodus. Moses was specifically told by God to write down their journeyings. He was told to do this for a purpose. In that video I will take you through all the steps of the journey through the wilderness, right up to the time that they entered the Promised Land. Using the Assyrian and Babylonian records to assist us, I shall even help you identify the places mentioned in the Bible and unravel what the Bible is actually telling us. But that's for another time. Josephus tells us that the Jews who returned from Babylon and Persia had to work fully armed to undertake the restoration work because of constant attacks by the inhabitants of the land. Most of these were people who had claimed for themselves what was prime fertile land, which suddenly became theirs for the taking after Israel and Judah had been taken into captivity. Accordingly, the mason had his sword on, as well as he that brought the materials for building. He, that is Nehemiah, also appointed that their shields should lie very near them, and he placed trumpeters at every 500 feet, and charged them that if their enemies appeared, they should give notice of it to the people, that they might fight in their armour, and their enemies might not fall upon them naked. In short, what has been preserved of the original records is the best the scribes could have achieved under the conditions in which they had to work. We just need to be conscious of this fact and make allowances for it when undertaking any study of the Bible. These scribes did not just make these stories up, they were preserving their nation's recorded history. Yes, there are errors in the Bible, and to ignore them is to bury one's head in the sand. When the Jews returned from Persia and Babylonia during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, there could have hardly been anything left of the records. It is almost certain that such records will have been in an extremely poor state of preservation, and we can console ourselves with the fact that what has been preserved is the best the scribes could do with the limited means at their disposal. Bear in mind also that these were troubled times. The inhabitants of the land were not happy to see the Jews returning and made life difficult for them. Having demonstrated the contrived nature of the Assyrian records, we can be certain that the biblical record is going to be far more reliable. For a start, the Jews had no hidden agenda. Their intention was to record for posterity the history of their people. By contrast, the Assyrians and Egyptians were trying to demonstrate that their nations were the oldest on earth. Also, the Assyrian and Babylonian records demonstrate a number of usurpations of the throne by foreigners, some of whom are referred to in the king lists as Sealand kings, whilst the Jewish monarchs are all descended from the one person, that is, King David. Despite all the errors, the Bible is still the most reliable record we have, and we ignore it at our peril.